Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to NPU Live. It is Friday, May 8th, and that means we've got through another week. If we can make it to 5, week 8
of the pandemic,
of the quarantine, of this unprecedented moment. And we're so excited to be with you this morning. A really historic moment for the National Parents Union because we are releasing our first ever polling data, our big national poll that we have done of families across America about how they're feeling dealing with the coronavirus, dealing with new restrictions, a whole new way of life. You know, we've been talking about it for weeks and weeks, but now the opportunity has come for us to really take our anecdote to a data-driven conversation and hopefully provide all of our friends working in the education space, working on all levels of government with some real informed data that will help them to make better decisions on behalf of families across the country. So very excited to share that with you this morning. Although we do start off with some grim news in that 15% unemployment nearly across the country.
That's right. 15%. In response to that, Nancy Pelosi and Bernie Sanders said they will be coming out pushing for a $2,000 a month stipend to those who are affected.
Yeah, I mean, it's just an unprecedented moment, and certainly, you know, a lot of folks across the country were able to receive those $1,200 checks. But as we were saying from the very beginning, $1,200 for 1 month barely makes rent in most urban areas across the country, and families are really hurting. 15% unemployment. Do we even know when the last time we had unemployment that high?
I know that we are hitting depression era level unemployment right now, and some people still haven't received their first payment. They're still trying to get through to unemployment after 2 months of trying to apply.
Yeah, some of the wait times up to 8.5 hours waiting on the phone. You're having websites crashing. You know, the different amounts that you can receive through unemployment really changing from state to state, but we're already seeing state budgets starting to buckle under the pressure of having so many people filing for unemployment. So stay tuned. We'll keep you up to date in terms of latest developments there. But the big news for us for the day, our big survey, our national poll being released this morning. Why don't you give us some of the top lines?
Well, the one that stood out to me was that by a 2-to-1 margin, parents feel that schools should remain closed, that they should not reopen until there is no health risks, even if it means that their children will fall farther behind in education.
Yeah, it's very interesting, this particular result, because you are starting to see schools thinking about reopening. What does that look like? What should they prioritize? What is really concerning to us as parents and families is the fact that we're not at the table. So it would be wonderful for you to say that schools are now open, schools are now closed, making those decisions, but you must do it in consultation with families, with community. This is joint decision making, and frankly, parents are very concerned about whether or not our systems are going to be able to meet the health restrictions that are going to have to happen for schools to open safely. And you know, we're having a very robust conversation in the National Parents Union. We have a work group that is actually channeling a lot of energy, thinking this through, taking a look at the you know, the recommendations that we're getting from the American Society of Pediatrics, you know, so that we can actually make sure that our recommendations are informed by data. But one thing is clear from the information that we have been gathering through our national poll, and that is that parents are not ready to send our kids back to school until we feel certain that the risk has been averted.
Right, and then there's even talk about, you know, what is safe. As we were talking before the show, some states have opened up. They're doing it with half-filled classrooms, staggered scheduling, students coming in single file, taking temperatures, but even some, and of course wearing masks, but even some of the teachers say, you know, as soon as they turn their back, as will happen, like with my kids, the social distancing goes out the window.
Yeah, how do you tell 7- and 8-year-old little boys to stay away from each other, to stay 6 feet away? And what happens when they don't? And frankly, we've also got to get down to brass tacks. We're not sending our kids into pristine buildings that have been well maintained. In many of our urban areas, we don't even have functioning bathrooms. We're lucky if we have running water, and some of you are going to say, Keri, you're being ridiculous. an expose in the Boston Globe just a few months ago talking about the fact that we do not have functioning bathrooms here in the city of Boston where we're broadcasting from, let alone hot water. We're going to have to bring in, hand sanitizing stations, making sure we have hand sanitizer. How often are these buildings going to be clean? How are we going to deal with a student or a teacher, frankly, that suddenly develops symptoms?
Right.
All of these things must be addressed, including notification of parents when their child may have been exposed, how we deal with the nurse's office, how we deal with cafeterias, how we deal with playgrounds, hallways, all of these things that Tim was just mentioning, on the minds of parents. And until we get some real answers and we can have 100% assurance that we've got a solid plan, parents are not ready.
Well, I think it goes to your point, the point too that was brought up in the survey, that we need to rethink education, what takes place in the school, how we teach our kids, and now how we protect our kids. And that came up in the survey. 61% of parents say schools should be focused at this moment on rethinking how we educate students and coming up with new ways to teach them.
Yeah, so the real headline here being that, this is a moment, parents are not interested in just shoving their kids back in the status quo. We've been talking about how this time is, an unprecedented challenge,
Right.
but it's also an unprecedented opportunity. So parents are looking for educators right now to be rethinking education and transforming it and taking a look at best practices, what works, what doesn't work, trying new things. Again, by a 2-to-1 margin, parents are saying now is the time for us to rethink education and think outside the box.
That's great. And finally, too, to that point, as far as, how are you satisfied with your kids' current level of remote learning? And it does differ, based on income. Right now, if you are pretty much 72% of parents who make $75,000 or more, they're pretty happy. But it does dip, though, for those to about 64% for those who make $50,000 or less. So again, we see those income gaps, those income differentials there about satisfactory in remote learning and education.
And as we dig into the poll, one thing is very clear when it comes to transforming education. Parents are looking for schools to innovate. And from the very beginning, handing kids a Chromebook and making sure that they have access to the technology, making sure they have Wi-Fi and everything they need to get going at home if we do have rolling blackouts of education. And
Right.
That is something very real that we're going to have to consider. A lot of these policy discussions that are happening right now, talking about shifting schedules to a 2-day, 3-day schedule, meaning your child might only go to school 2 days a week. What happens during the other 3 days? Or if you're on the 3-day schedule, what happens during the 2 days? We're talking about major life changes that
Right.
are going to directly impact families. And these decisions are right now being made without us. So as we've been saying to our affiliate network, more than 200 organizations across the country, and this conversation reaching over 1 million families a week, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. And right now, the time has come for us to move from rapid response mode, which I know a lot of you are in right now, to making sure we are advocating and using our voices to be heard at the table. And hopefully arming our parents across the country with this information and getting this information into the hands of policymakers, elected officials, and the powers that be will help to better inform this conversation so we can make sure that the voice and priorities of families are heard.
That's great, Keri. Just to add to that, how are you feeling right now about your kids' online remote learning experience?
I'm feeling a little mixed about it.
Why is that?
I think for a number of reasons. So much information coming at them and different websites and different buy-in from my kids. It really depends on their context, right? So, I thought my oldest son would have just, been so excited about more screen time and getting on Zoom and participating virtually and getting on websites and playing educational games. And he has been a bear, frankly, to get online. And it's really, I feel like it's hurting our relationship a little bit, because every conversation, he actually said to me the other day, every time I talk to you, Mom, you're telling me to get on Prodigy or Khan Academy or Think Reading or whatever it is. You don't talk to me about anything else, because he is so disengaged. It does feel like every conversation I've got to be like, Matt, please, will you hop on? Will you just do a Zoom? Will you just talk to this teacher? So I'm finding, as a parent, I got to back off a little bit.
Mm.
He is loving doing a lot of the coding programming that is
Nice.
kind of outside the educational scope of what he's been given, but I know it's good for him. I know it engages him and incorporates math and science. So I'm letting him run with it a little bit.
Yep.
Because he's also a kid who has autism and ADHD,
Yep.
and maintaining his mental and emotional health and making sure he's in a good place is really important. For my younger guys, I think it's that lack of connection with friends has been really sad. It's been, and so that's causing me to rethink, well, how do I make social interaction possible for them? Especially the baby. I can see, I can see that sadness. A mama can look at her baby and
Yep.
say, oh my gosh, I see that sad. I see it wearing on him. And he's 7.
Right.
I don't really want anything wearing on his soul right
Nope.
now. I want him thinking about Ninja Turtles and Minecraft and Captain Underpants and running out in the yard and learning how to ride a skateboard.
That's about it.
That's what I want his big worries to be, not whether or not he's ever going to see his friends again, and all of these big worries he's got on his shoulders.
Yeah,
so
I agree.
It's a mixed bag.
I think
Tell me about how you're.
I think it's the same exact thing. Some of the things that caught my attention in the poll was concerned about how do you keep your kids engaged, seeing some anxiety in your kids.
Mm-hmm.
My thing that drives me crazy is the lack of consistency I've seen with schools and teachers within the school with how they distribute work. I had a little fit yesterday as I went to Google Classroom, because Google Classroom gets you into Schoology, which gets you into Freckle. And I had to find several things from my oldest son's education. I found out that day that apparently his work will be counting toward grades. Maybe, I don't know. That's what the email said. That was news to me. It didn't come up in the IEP meeting on Monday, but that was news to me.
Yeah, the consistency in communication, and we're not just talking about the frequency, we're talking about the messaging.
Yes.
And this is what has been very disappointing in many states, and frankly nationally. We got to get together on this and really get some thought leaders to give us the best guidance to say, like, listen, this is an unprecedented moment of emergency education.
Yep.
Parents are not teachers,
Nope.
but we'll do the best we can.
Right.
We're not going to grade folks based on the work that's happening right now.
Right.
We're going to maybe maintain a holding pattern, like make sure we can mitigate learning loss to make sure the train doesn't go off the tracks.
Right.
Everybody is going to be behind. All the schools are closed. What in our poll, 96% of parents saying their school
That's right.
is closed, because some of them are homeschool parents. So, they're going to say no, school is open, or virtual school parents. But 96% of schools are closed, meaning 96% of our kids are dealing with the same problem and will probably have some learning loss.
Yep.
So why this need to put additional pressure on parents and families to try to introduce new content so that we continue to push them forward? We cannot in this moment be thinking about how can we most quickly shove our kids back into the box that I would contend did not work very well for them to begin with. Why aren't we thinking about how do we transform this system so it now meets the needs of the kids, all of whom are going through this unprecedented crisis? This is what our poll is saying to you this morning, folks. Parents don't want the same old, same old. They don't want to shove their kids back in the box. They want us doing our best work to think about how do we reimagine, this system so that it better fits the needs of our kids.
That's right.
One of the frustrating, and I don't mean to put you on blast.
Go for it. I think I know where you're going here, so go ahead. I think I know where you're going.
It is it's frustrating to watch the decision making again happening to us without us. And we really noticed this on a hyper local level here in this house.
Yep. Always personally. Yep.
Suddenly, you were receiving an email yesterday saying you missed a Zoom.
I knew that's where we were going.
Yeah.
So apparently, we now have daily 9 a.m. Google Class meets, 5 times a week, 9 a.m. Now, I don't know about you, but at 8:45, I'm trying to get ready for this show. At 9, we're here, we're working, and I'm thinking a lot of people start work at 9. A lot of people start work earlier than that. If you're one of my friends who works at Target, you're there 6, 7 a.m. You're not home for 9 a.m. Google Meet to get your kid all set up. And I just find that, first of all, wasn't communicated well to me. It's not considerate of the parent needs, even though I consistently get emails complimenting me on how hard I'm working. I know how hard I work. I got it. It's a little bit much.
It's a little frustrating when, there's one person who just makes the decision for sometimes, 25, 30 families
Yep.
about this is how you're going to run your day. No doodle poll saying, hey,
Nope.
does this time work? Or, hey, I'm going to run 2 Zooms today. We're going to do one at 9. We're going to do one at 2 based on what works for your family. It's just, this is what has been decided for
Right.
you. And you're going to have to modify your daily
That's
schedule
right.
to it. So again, not to be the whiny parents, but this is what happens and this is the erosion of, that parent-teacher relationship when, you just arbitrarily decide like, this is what you're going to do and this is how it's going to work and this is how you're going to run your house. Because right now, a lot of our homes are running on,
Fumes.
running on fumes, running on, when can I try to work? What time can I grab? I've got to be on the phone to unemployment because I'm going to try again today to see if I can get hooked up, or I'm out the door at 7 a.m. because I'm an essential worker and that's what time my work starts.
Yep.
So I think, again, providing parents with flexibility, providing them with support in this moment, realizing that parents are on the front lines
Yep.
of trying to get this done. This has to be a collaborative, co-created process and shared decision making. It's really hard for these education systems to share decision making, but ultimately, these are our children.
Yep.
We're fighting as hard as we can to make sure that they don't lose anything this year. Work with us, support us so we can get this done. And frankly, when you're thinking about reopening, if you do not have parents in their context at the table, you're doing it wrong. And I think that's quite clear in what came out of it.
Right. But we'll be having results for you each and every week with parent feedback. Special thanks. I see here Sonia Alvarado's on fire. She's online here. Kelly Williams-Ballar, some great feedback about this survey. We can't send children into harm.
We can't.
We can't do that. Rodolfo, good morning. Good to have everyone here online. And please, again, join us for some of our other shows too. Coming up at noontime, you'll have our NPU Live in Spanish. At 2 p.m., you'll have the amazing Christina Laster, Managing Day to Day. You'll have Bernita Bradley at 4 p.m. with The Apparent Voice.
Live from Detroit.
Love that title.
Live from Detroit.
And at 9 p.m., end your day with Nightly Restorative Session with Marisol Arusha.
And more results, as Tim said, will be revealed. We'll be giving you updates every week, and you can find updates on our Facebook page and all of our social media channels online, National Parents Union. All right, so excited today. We've got a lot of great guests, including one reigning right here from the beautiful Commonwealth of Massachusetts, as we call it, God's country. She is the executive director of Amplify Latinx, of which the Massachusetts Parents United Group and the National Parents Union are proud members of this network. We love her so much. She is a fireball. She's also a ray of sunshine in the morning, looking so beautiful. Rosario, I'm going to screw up your name. You're going to kill me.
Go for it.
Joining us. Rosario, thank you so much for being with us this morning.
Thank you, Keri. It's my pleasure being here. Thank you so much for inviting me.
We love you so much because you do such an extraordinary job of being a thoughtful connector, a strategic connector here in Massachusetts and really nationally. The work that Amplify Latinx is doing is just leading the way in how to really connect voices in the Latino community. And we have been so proud to be there since the birth of this network and this organization. So so proud to be with you and the work that you're doing right now. So first off, we want to talk to you as a mama because you are, first and foremost, I know that you feel the same way I do. No matter what fancy title we get, #1 job in life is being mama. So how are things going in your home? How are you feeling right now? And how are you handling this mess?
Well, I can say today we're feeling content. We started the day, okay, you know, there was a little rocky start with some of the setup, but we managed. I am the mom for two beautiful kids, 12 and 14 years old. So I'm dealing with middle schoolers here. And it's just been interesting. When we first started with this new normal, it was chaotic. It was very confusing, overwhelming. You know, there was a lot of feelings involved. I was very concerned of how I was going to be able to divide my time and pay, you know, the attention that I felt, you know, my kids needed throughout the day. On top of the work that I do, my husband is also working from home. He's a nurse, so he's busy on you know, doing triage and talking to the patients on the phone. So everything is happening all together. And I was just very concerned about how we were going to manage. I will say that, you know, now, what is it, week 8 of this pandemic? I think we have a good, you know, a good program going, but you know, with ups and downs throughout the day. I can relate to what you were saying earlier. You know, my kids are very, very different in terms of personalities and styles and learning styles. So my daughter, actually, the 14-year-old, I think it has been a blessing for her to be able to do this online learning, distance learning, because she's getting a little bit of more individualized attention, and she blossoms with that. She wasn't doing very well with some of the some areas, but now with these changes, she's, you know, doing excellent, and she's engaged, and she's communicating with the teacher, taking initiative. So that's great. But my son, the 12-year-old, needs that social interaction that you were talking about for your younger kids. And I can see it. I can see when he's getting a little restless, because he has a lot of energy, and he's very creative. He's very social. He wants to be out there. He feeds from that. So and he's very savvy and very on technology, but he gets tired of it. And I thought it was going to be the opposite. So that was a surprise.
That's really surprising. And I mean, it's a blessing that we get to learn more about our children and who they really are and have all of this focused time. But it was really surprising for me as a mama, like things I thought I knew about my kids, you know, weren't exactly right. And, you know, so it's been quite an opportunity for us to learn as mothers.
Right. And also, you know, one thing that is being kind of like that I'm facing right now and thinking about how I'm going to, with my husband, how as parents we're going to deal with that is, you know, I have an 8th grader that was ready for graduation and kind of like having that milestone and all that comes with that. So how are, now that we get into that point, how we're gonna commemorate that and make sure that there's a moment for her to do that when she's not, you know, physically connecting with friends and is not in that environment at school. So that's one of the things that I noticed from her, that now she's noticing that it's coming up, and she wasn't thinking about that before, but now, you know, she's seeing it coming, and she's getting a little sad around that. So we're trying to figure out how can we be creative with that and see if we can find something really cool to do to you know, to really celebrate that moment that we were all so excited about.
Really paying close attention to our older kids. At first it was like, how do we keep the younger kids busy, you know, because there's so much and they need so much from us. But what we have found during our conversations over the last few weeks is how important it is that we pay equal attention to our older kids that may seem a little bit more self-sufficient, but that piece that we talk with Mira Brown from Prepared Parents almost every morning about, you know, different tips and different things we need to look out for. But we've really come to learn how mattering, and that idea of just sitting down and saying, how are you feeling? What's going on? That focused attention for our older kids really is, because they're going through a lot. You know, you remember, Rosario, when you were your daughter's day, I remember being 14. Okay. Everything seemed like life and death. This was the pinnacle of my life.
Everything is big.
Happening was like the most important thing that was ever going to happen to me my whole life. These were the friends I was always going to have. You know, these were the triumphs that were going to define me as a human being. You know, as women now, we know a little differently, but you know how that feels in your heart, how big it feels and how overwhelming it is. And you're just starting to feel new feelings and go through all of these things. So, you know, it really is a moment that we've got to stop and say, you know what, transitioning from 8th grade into high school is a really big deal. And acknowledging that can be a moment of opportunity and saying, listen, I get it and I understand. So how can we figure this out together? As mamas, we got to figure this out.
Yeah, so having those conversations are so important and checking in. I would say too, you know, at that age, they have access to more information. So they're more aware of what's going on in terms of the overall, you know, pandemic and kind of like seeing all of the things that are happening, not only in this country, but globally. And they react to that too. There's, you know, that level of like, oh my God, you know, this is a big deal. This is a big thing. And then, you know, you see that worry and that anxiety coming up here and there too when they have access to that information. So also checking in about that. I'm at the beginning, I was like kind of like sheltering my daughter a little bit from that information, but she finds it, she sees it, you know, she has of course technology available. Plus, you know, it's not that they're not talking about that at school through the online learning. So, you know, checking in about how they're feeling about everything that is going on, because they have reactions to that as well. And that can, you know, play a role in mental health and, you know, their daily throughout the day. So that's another point that I'm trying to always touch up on in those conversations with my daughter at the beginning of the day and the end of the day.
Rosario, before we go on to your bigger work in the network and what's happening in the Latino community, I've got to ask you one more question just to get your reaction as a parent to our poll this morning and some of the results that we're seeing nationally about how parents are feeling about the idea of reopening schools when we feel ready. And you have a very unique lens in that your husband is a nurse. You kind of see this up close, and in your work, you're dealing not only with the business community and education, but health issues and disparities and everything that we're seeing. You know, would love to get your reflection from what we're seeing in the national poll. It says, you know, by a margin of 2 to 1, parents want to have some assurances that schools are safe, that it is safe for our children to return to these buildings, that we're sending them back in good hands, that they're going to be well taken care of and this virus is under control before we're ready to send kids back. And they're also taking a look at the fact that this is a unique opportunity for us to start to rethink what education looks like. And you and I every single day work on this issue of economic disparity, of educational disparity, how our children are underserved, even in the best of times, pre-COVID. So I got to tell you, you know, from my perspective, it's very hard for me to trust, you know, that the system that unfortunately leads kids like mine into a school to prison pipeline. Now I'm going to trust that they're going to do right by my kids and make sure that, you know, everything is safe and disinfected and we've got the right procedures. It's very hard for me to say, okay, you know, you got this. Not right now. I'm not ready until I see a really solid plan. How do you see this as a mama?
I'm with you. You know, I'm very concerned when these conversations start to happen about reopening, when I'm not even, you know, it's so uncertain at this point. We don't have any clarity on how things are going to be set up. And I'm talking not only, you know, we're focusing on the schools, but we're talking in general about businesses and just the way things are going to be run in general in our communities. So I'm not for reopening if I don't have a clear plan in front of me where I feel like my kids, my family is gonna be safe. So I'm with you on that, and I know many parents that I know are on the same boat as well. And as you said, you know, also this is the opportunity for me. You know, I've seen, of course, all the negative things that this pandemic has brought to light. That is, you know, the things that we already knew that were happening, but now it's like in our faces, and it's just, you know, there's a light really pointing at them. So, you know, it's hardening to see them, but at the same time, it's the opportunity to act. And we have to act now in order to see and make the changes, the systemic changes that we want to see in the long term, in the long run. So this is the opportunity to speak up, to get involved, to disrupt those systems. And you are amazing at doing that in terms of, representing parents and bringing parents together and creating these coalitions to have these voices at the table. Let's keep on doing it, because there's a whole group of others that are trying to just move on with, same old things, and that's not gonna work for us.
Let's dig into this specifically, and I've got some tough questions that we've got to really confront as we talk about reopening, as we talk about disproportional impact in communities of color and low-income communities. It was frightening to me, and I don't know how you see this, but you're looking at organizations throughout a number of different lenses, the number of different ways they come to the table. But overall, there was this dramatic shift. When we started talking about places like Chelsea, when we started talking about places like Lynn, when we started talking about places like Brooklyn, New York, and Los Angeles, where you have high concentrations of Latino communities, disproportionately higher rates of infection. I'm thinking about Chicago and the Black community as well. When the conversation started to shift, that we were seeing disproportional impact, and it makes sense because many in our community are the essential workers, they're the frontline workers, they're the folks that have the healthcare disparities, not equitable access to high quality healthcare, disproportional impact of, some of those high risk conditions because of lack of opportunity and access to have healthcare.
Housing, dense neighborhoods, you name it.
It makes sense that we would be disproportionately impacted. But once that happened and we started to see it, all of a sudden, there was a little shift in the conversation to, oh, okay, well, I guess this is hitting Black and brown communities and low-income communities a little bit more. Well, if that's the case, well, maybe we should just think about reopening. Maybe we should think about I saw a shift in Donald Trump in a lot of positioning saying, oh, okay, we'll try to do what we can. It was almost like this movement. And, the conversation we've been having here is that racism did not take a break because a pandemic broke out. Like, these systems are still incredibly problematic. So as the head of, the largest Latino community coalition in the entire Commonwealth of Massachusetts with, almost 100 organizations all coming together, how is Amplify looking at this? And how do we start to make sure that we can walk and chew gum in terms of, doing the rapid response work we need across communities, but at the same time, shining a light on inequity and really making sure our voices in the advocacy fight at the same time?
Yeah, so, we are an organization that focuses on advancing the next generation of Latinx civically engaged and empowered leaders. That's our role, our mission. So when this happened, of course, we say, what are the immediate needs of our communities? Because we were already predicting that we were going to see these disparities, right? So the rapid response mode for us was to really think about, our education system and being in conversations with your organizations and other groups that are working in making sure that they're paying attention to that. And then, paying attention to the economic opportunity piece with our small, minority-owned businesses, micro businesses, and making sure that there's advocacy around that. So, at the same time that we were trying to partner with all of our partner organizations and strategic partners to make sure that we were delivering services and really addressing the immediate needs, we were also thinking about what are the conversations that we need to be having right now in terms of creating these coalitions to move forward with advocacy efforts. And we've been outspoken, we've been writing op-eds, we've been coming into different shows and just continue hammering that need of coming together and representing the voices of the Latino community, and really talking to the legislators about what's next. This is where we need to be focusing on. So working with our partners, our goal is to develop this shared policy agenda where we're going to be addressing the needs that we're seeing right now. You're talking about data earlier, really rooted on data and making sure that we are moving all of the voices and all of the people that represent our Latino community in Massachusetts to have a voice to redesign these policies and and then, you know, really address systemic change, as I mentioned before, in the long term. So that's our goal, like really, you know, underground support with all of our partner organizations that are more grassroots, but at the same time, not forgetting about the grass tops and really making sure that we're bringing everyone together, just as you do, to have those conversations and really address the needs now so we can make changes for the future.
I really think it's critically important that we turn this moment of challenge into opportunity. And we're constantly talking about how do we transform this moment into an equity infused educational recovery? How are we thinking about how we transition from a place of hurt and being unprepared from lessons learned to and what the disparities were before to making this a transformational moment where we are really starting from a place of power and saying it's time to reimagine all kinds of systems.
Yeah.
What advice do you have for folks? Like, because right now, you know, everything seems so overwhelming. You and I just talked about it, like even in our own homes, like things seem really, really big. And there are folks like me who are now making asks of parents and families across the Commonwealth saying, I know that things are hard, but we also need your voice. We need you to pick up the phone. We need you to participate. Your voice is critically important about what you're going through. What do you say to those folks in terms of maybe finding that 5 minutes to get involved in how to take advantage of this moment?
Well, one of the things that we really pay attention to, and you were talking about earlier about that meeting at 9 in the morning, that was kind of like a schedule without your voice and your decision. It's like we pay attention to that, trying to create access and opportunities for people to get involved and working out outside of the box around how we can design that to make sure that everyone has participation, and that participatory piece is so important. So making sure that we are thinking about all of our, you know, sectors in our community and how they can participate. That's really important, and different ways in that they can come into the conversation. But yeah, I feel like I'm busier than ever. With this situation, like I thought, okay, I'm gonna be working from home. I'm gonna have time to do this and that. No, it's busy. It's a busy time because big things are happening and big change is coming. So you know, I understand that we are constrained and we are pulled into so many different directions because we have different priorities. But at the same time, this is the moment where we need to act. So and we cannot act or move forward without all of the voices involved, all of the people represented. So I say, you know, find a moment, and we can figure it out with you what's going to be the best way, what's going to be your role, but you need to have a role and we need to move forward together.
I was talking about big change. My final question for you this morning is one that, you know, I have a feeling I know the answer to, but I'm gonna put you on the hot seat right now. The National Parents Union and Massachusetts Parents United, we are going to be launching an effort called Every Family Votes. We feel it is critically important in this moment. If you haven't learned from this situation how critical leadership is and making sure you have the right leadership on all levels actually is, you're never going to learn. We have a theory that this is the year where we can get every family across the country to vote. And so we're launching that initiative, Every Family Votes, you know, here in the Commonwealth, across the nation, to get everyone registered to vote online. Only 39 states right now offer that, but you know, we're going to be making a push to make sure that things change so that we can get everybody possible registered to vote so that they can participate, and pushing for vote by mail to make sure that it is possible for families to not have to put themselves in jeopardy. Although I know that because of this situation, many will, but they shouldn't have to be able to participate and have their voices heard in the upcoming election. So we know that you guys are so passionate about voter registration and voting. I think this is an easy ask, but I'm putting you on the hot seat. Are we going to work together on this?
Let's do it. I can't wait. We need you. We need you because you are, again, a strategic partner to our Latinx Power Coalition. So you are essential to us. And that's one of, you know, voting access, get out the vote, and really advocating around equity around voting is so important to us. It's one of our main areas of priority. And we need all of you in order to get to those goals and making sure that every Latino family and resident of Massachusetts is ready to vote, has all the information and access to work to do that, and that we are there for them to walk them through that process. So please count us in. We'll love to work together with you.
So excited about this, and I got to tell you, while we are trying to help serve our communities and help, families that we know in our neighborhoods, there are three things that parents are really excited about. The activists across the country and here in Massachusetts. Number one is making sure our kids are healthy and safe when they return to school. Number two is making sure everyone has equitable access to high quality health care so we can get better and make sure our communities are whole. And then finally, changing the leadership of this nation. And last night I was on the phone with activists literally across the country, across Massachusetts joining us, but across the country. And they have a field plan. They cannot wait to get into this work. They are fired up. And they are more ready to go than I've ever seen. And you know what? I'm an old field dog. I've been in this game about 20 years. I have never seen a group of women so lit up and ready with a timeline and a campaign plan.
I love it.
So you better be ready, Amplify, all of you. Latinas across the country are ready, and they are going to run this campaign. So we are very excited about it.
Wonderful. I can't wait. Yeah, we need that. We need that energy. We need that organization and that plan to be ready in place so we can just come with a boom and make it happen.
Rosario, thank you so much for being with us. Rosario Ubera Mignana. I always want to put an extra I in your name, and that's Venezuelan and me always wanting to flip it to Portuguese too. So I am sorry for that. I apologize, but you are such a ray of sunshine. Your work is so important to us. It's inspiring. The leadership from Amplify Latinx is so needed in Massachusetts, and it's just a shining example for groups across the country doing this work. So blessed to have you with us and a part of our family. We love you so much, and we hope that you join us again soon so that we can continue to fire up our families across the country.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure, and let's keep up the good work. And I'm on it. Whenever you need me, please let me know. I'll come.
We love it. Thank you, Rosario. Now we're going to turn to our friend Doug Thaman, a little bit easier name for me to say this morning, who is joining us from Missouri. He's the head of the Missouri Charter Public School Association, a good friend of ours, and just a wonderful organizer and school partner in Missouri, who is doing heroic work out there with families across his state. And we want to check in with Missouri. We have a fantastic delegate leading us right from Missouri, our friend Christy, who is part of the National Parents Council and always keeping us abreast, but definitely gave us a heads up about the special work coming from the Missouri Charter Public School Association and what's been happening there. So I wanted to take advantage of this time to check in with Doug and see what's happening. Doug, good morning. How are you?
Good morning, Keri. It's good to be here, and thanks for the opportunity. It's been really great just to listen to the conversation and somebody who's working with schools and working with trying to change policy. The good reminders around we need to make sure that parents are involved.
Yeah, and what's so refreshing, I love talking to the folks running some of the charter public school associations. Yesterday, I was on a Zoom webinar with over, I think it was close to 300 school leaders all across New York, anxious to actually hear from parents. I love seeing this energy from the charter school movement, really seeking our advice, our guidance, asking us, hey, how can we do a better job? What are parents thinking? And what I've noticed is that's really been the vibe from charter schools from day one, the approach of, how do we get technology into people's homes? How do we rethink things? It's the immediate flexibility and pivot that I love about what charter schools bring to this stuff. Even as a district school, a traditional district school parent who has been on a wait list for a long time, can't get my kid into charter school quite yet. But so tell us about what this has been like for you and your schools and how you guys are doing in Missouri.
Yeah, thanks. The pivoting has been really, really important, and it's been impressive to see how our charter schools have been able to pivot and to move to remote learning. Some of the more successful ones we're seeing because they already had some of those those distance learning, remote learning processes in place. So families already had an idea of how to work with that. The biggest part was the distance learning gap and how to make sure that families, particularly our most vulnerable families, had access uh, to technology, to the equipment they needed, but then also making sure that they had access to just what they need to feed their family and to make sure that their family is being well taken care of. And so those were the initial steps. That's where we spent a lot of our time during the first 4 or 5 weeks of this pandemic. Now we're pivoting again, looking at, okay, now that the distance learning, remote learning plans are in place, what are parents saying to us? What do they need? And how do we continue to improve that? Um, and we are starting to have conversation around reopening, but it's not with the idea of we're going to reopen tomorrow. It's the idea of, we know in a period of time that's going to happen. And so how do we make sure that we're ready for that? And what are the flexibilities? What are the innovative ways that we can do this? We also see this in Missouri. In Missouri, the state says 1 in 5. We know it's more like 40% of our public school students in Missouri are not on grade level. And so this is a moment where flexibility, innovation, the voices of parents saying we want something different, together we could really make that happen, and we could really help to not just get through a pandemic, but to improve the quality of public education, forever. So we're really trying to look at this as seizing a moment.
And Doug, we get the data that backs you up. It's no longer anecdote of what you're hearing. We actually have the data that says this is what parents want by a 2-to-1 margin. They're not interested in having their kids shoved back in the box. They want to think outside the box and how we do that. And frankly, like that's what I love about charter schools and the vibe. I don't love everything about charter schools. I'm not married to any particular governance model. I always say I'm here for outcomes. I like the outcomes I see out of some charter schools that figure things out, but I do love the vibe that if something's not working, we don't continue to have it not work forever. We try to think outside the box and pivot and think about different things. So I think that is what attracts so many parents to charter schools and having that as an option. Doug, I want to ask you about, the thinking about reopening, the planning, not just reopening, but overall approach to how parents should be involved. And I've got to tell you, a lot of us are wounded from many of these fights through parent engagement and what that means, whether it's, perceived power, like, okay, we'll let you pick the lunches on Friday, or maybe we'll change from black pants to khaki pants this year based on parent outcry. But as we really rethink education and policy right now, we've got a lot of data, we've got a lot of information. So I'd love to hear from you how you plan to engage parents around the really critical resource we have right now, which is a front row seats to what our kids are learning right now. And how can you capitalize on the fact that parents have a lot of information? We are very engaged. How do we create things like transformative assessments so we can better equip educators on how they can help our kids next year?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think, it's not just let's come up with one way that we can involve parents. Which I think is typically what we've done in education at times with schools, is to say, okay, let's come up with 2 or 3 ways we can have parents be involved, and then we can say that they're engaged. It's making sure there's seats at the table all the time, and making sure that those conversations are happening all the time. It's running when you're running scenarios, when you're putting plans together, whether it's a plan around assessment or a plan around reopening classrooms, or a plan around how are you going to be handling some of those common procedures, making sure parents have a voice in that, and that they are part of that decision making. Very often people, because everybody's been in school, kind of assumes they know how school should run, and we're all experts. Because we're parents, at times we kind of tend to have the same assumption of, well, we know what every parent thinks. And we have to get past that. We have to be willing to say, no, there's a lot of different ideas out there, thoughts out there, vulnerabilities out there, and making sure everybody has an opportunity for voice. And that's a challenging part, right? Because everybody's busy. I mean, parents right now are busier than they've ever been, but still need to make sure we have opportunities for voice.
Yeah, Doug, I want to take advantage of this opportunity so I can tell you, and maybe you can spread the message. And we were asked this question yesterday by our friends in New York. You know, what do parents need in this moment? Parents need support. You know, parents need a little grace, a little understanding. You know, I bet, you know, logically, you know, that, you know, our kids act a little different at home than they do in class. Don't we all know that as parents? You ever walk into like a parent teacher conference and like I know with my baby David, he is a joy to have in class. I have heard that so many times. You know what? He's not always a joy to have at home. He gives me a hard time. He gives me a run for my money. I love him to death. He's the love of my life, but boy, whew, that has not changed during the pandemic. So I find it funny that sometimes the lens of educators, we hear this, you know, from again, families across the country, that the idea that parents are instantaneously going to turn into educators, that living rooms are going to instantaneously turn into classrooms. My living room is more apt to turn into a wrestling ring than a classroom because I have 3 little boys. So understanding the context of what's happening at home and managing some expectations for parents is critically important. And we're always trying to kind of, you know, make sure that folks understand the context of literally what's going on in our houses. Do you think that your schools get that? Are they providing parents with some grace, some understanding? Maybe not. Charter schools are known for their very high expectations of parents and students, and that's why we get some of the incredible outcomes. But you know, this is an unprecedented moment. So how are you guys dealing with that piece?
Yeah, I'm glad you used the word grace, because I think back at the beginning of this pandemic, which, you know, it's been 8 weeks, but it seems so long ago. It felt like there was a lot of grace. Teachers were having, schools having grace for families grace with schools. A lot of just, we're all kind of working at this. Let's try and figure this out. And then as time has gone on, it's felt like some of that's kind of slipped away. And I hope that we can get back to that, because parents need that grace. They need to, you know, on the one hand, I heard Tim talk about, you know, here are these, we've decided the times that you should be coming to meet with us by Zoom, which, you know, there needs to be some flexibility in that. But I do want schools checking in with families and listening to what they're saying and listening to the feedback and giving parents some grace to, you know, you didn't all sign up to say, now we're all going to start homeschooling our kids. You know, and you now have this partner of a classroom teacher who every day you're trying to work with, or multiple teachers. And we all have to be willing to work at that together and really support one another.
I think that's really critically important is just like maybe every couple of weeks we need to just center back and say, oh gosh, you know, because at the same time, you know, it's that mindset that we're not all going through a incredibly traumatic, you know, once in a generation kind of event. Like the idea that we're all trying to work as if everything's fine, you know, you can't leave your house, you know, you can't talk to people in the street, you can't hug anybody. You got to teach your kids, you know, who you were previously teaching, you know, to be polite and greet people in the neighborhood, to now fear and cover up your face, that is not going to have an impact on, you know, just psychologically where parents are, where educators are, where students are, all of us. So maybe just getting that reality check every few weeks, like take a deep breath. You know, as what I now call myself the superintendent of my own home, because I'm the leader of this school district here. You know, I occasionally have to call a snow day, you know, and say, you know what, conditions are just too bad for us to be right now. We need that deep breath. You know, I do want to ask, and this is kind of a painful political topic, but we've got to address, and I think it's really important. We've also been seeing across the country during this time of unprecedented challenge, some folks really trying to take advantage of longstanding political agendas and using this moment to really capitalize, and whether it's, taking suspicious votes under the cover of darkness, suddenly policy changes popping up here and there, or literally, I mean, you see UTLA in California coming out and saying, we don't want those disgusting charter schools to be co-located in areas that are near district schools out of fear for health. Really just once again capitalizing on an unprecedented moment of challenge to take advantage of, a longstanding political agenda. So are you seeing that in Missouri, like, and as a leader of charter schools in an entire state, like, how are you viewing this? Do you see dirty politics at play in this moment?
Oh, I don't think they ever go away, unfortunately. We just had a return of our General Assembly to working on budget and then priority bills during this time, and it wasn't that word of them returning wasn't 10 minutes out into the world when those who want to maintain a status quo were saying, well, you better keep an eye out, those sneaky charter school people, they're going to come in and they're going to try and get some things passed because no one's paying attention. And, it's just so there's the fact that is their focus, as opposed to, we need to really be worrying about kids and families, and how do we help take care of families? How do we help take care of kids? And how do we make sure that everybody has an opportunity for a great education? And let's figure out how to do that now, as opposed to let's just, okay, we've had 3 weeks of saying we're all here together, arm in arm. Now let's all go back to our corners and start fighting again. It just, it's really sad to see that happen, but it's something, unfortunately, middle of the country, we're seeing it back in play.
Well, Doug, I so appreciate you taking the time to check in with us this morning and give us your perspective as a state leader of the Missouri Charter Association. And, before we leave, I'm going to put you on the hot seat too. We really want to make sure that parents are a part of the conversation when it comes to reimagining education. Quite clearly in our national poll, parents are seeing this as a unique moment to rethink, how we engage in education, but also really needing assurances that our voices are going to be part of the reopening conversations. But I want to put you on the hot seat. How are you going to make sure that parents are at your table and that you're doing your due diligence to make sure that their context is part of the policy making and the best guidance that you're giving to schools across Missouri to make sure that the priorities of parents and the needs of students are met?
Yeah, I think we're in a really great position for that, because we have great folks like Christy who can kind of make sure they're saying to me, Doug, in these conversations, let's make sure that's happening, and those reminders and being involved. And then we in turn can do that with our schools and reminding our schools and trying to make that a regular part of the conversation. And there really should not be a day that goes by that there isn't some kind of input coming in from parents, coming in from students too, quite frankly. I mean, we need to have all of those voices coming in and talking to us. And so that's kind of where we want to be and try to be that connector and that reminder as well.
Well, I feel like you're in good hands because you have one of our strongest leaders in the entire National Parents Union, Christy Moreno-Joyce, who is there and is doing an incredible job of leading her entire region. And she's right there in your state. She's not going to let you get away with anything, Doug.
Right. Yeah.
And parents are going to be sitting right next to you, making sure you guys are all making the right decisions. So I feel like you're in good hands, but we're so blessed that you took the time to talk with us this morning and that we're getting your perspective. We want to make sure that everyone's included in this conversation, and just want to applaud you for really being thoughtful about making sure parent context is part of the conversations you're having.
Thanks, Keri. I appreciate the opportunity to be here today.
Doug Thayman joining us from Missouri. He is the head of the Missouri Charter Public School Association. I am going to say, Tim, quite often I am held up as the Cruella de Vil of charter schools, even though I'm not even a charter parent. My kids, all three of them, go to a traditional district school. But I got to tell you, I like what charter schools are doing.
Yeah.
Again, because they were able to pivot very quickly. And frankly, they're seeking our guidance.
I like that. I love that.
You know, traditional districts and frankly, state chiefs have reached out to us, and we're trying to do that. But really like the thoughtful conversations happening in the charter community. So keep going.
No reason not to respect that.
And Tim, yesterday, I want to say, I know that you were bird dogging this. Tim was actually after, he was on the phone this summer. He was on the phone with every head of every charter school association in the nation saying, we want
get your parents together.
State parent council of charter parents.
Yeah.
We want to see you. We're two.
I might have to follow up on that. I think some people owe me some homework.
Yeah, and he challenged all of them. Like, where's your state parent council? Where are your parents at the table? How do you know what parents feel if you haven't convened them all and you're not having a conversation?
That's right. Just give me one parent.
I got to tell you, New York made a pledge yesterday. They're getting on it. And so yeah, like
they were tough ones.
Tim has been doing the tough work of holding feet to the fire for parents across the country in the charter community. He's not a charter parent either. Because you know what? Parents aren't married to governance models.
That's right. I don't care if you hook my kid up to the matrix.
That's right.
I just want him to learn.
We're married to outcomes. You know, we want everybody collaborating to have the best ideas to get us what our kids deserve. That's what we're here about. Yeah, we're not here to march for your outcomes or for your governance model. He teases me all the time.
That's right. I don't care what you call it. Call it district charter. Call it Mickey Mouse Clubhouse. I just want our kids to learn.
Yeah. Tell me when my kid leaves the building that they're ready to access every opportunity. That's what our goal is here.
Get a job, move on out.
That's right. Move out.
Give
me some grandbabies. I want happy grandbabies.
That's right. Just need someone to take care of me.
That's right. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Again, more to come on our really powerful National Parents Union national poll.
That's right. Every week we're going to have results.
Now we're going to hold your feet to the fire and make sure you run with it. Parents, by a 2-to-1 margin, telling you directly that they want to make sure you have a rock solid plan that our kids are going to be safe in schools before you open those doors. And we plan to be at the table. So be ready.
Have a nice weekend, everyone.
We'll see you on Monday.
See you later.